I am your humble editor of PDF 2.0, but I am not, repeat, not an author of much of the content. I have done my fair share of damage to the document over time, but many of these features I cannot and will not attempt to explain to you in detail, but will be delighted to attempt to offer what I can. So we're going to go through the path to PDF 2.0, how we got here. That'll be pretty quick. And run through several other aspects of the distinction between PDF 2.0 and 1.7, qualitative changes, strategic changes, new features, and so on. So how did we get here? The standardization process for PDF actually began in the late 90s with PDFX, so that we don't kind of refer to it anymore that way. We just say that the first PDFX specification was X1A, published in 2001. And this was originally developed, of course, for the print industry. So PDF Exchange was a necessary means for them back then of creating a genuine degree of interoperability for print purposes in PDF. This laid the foundation stone, I think, for an effort that got off the same year that PDF X1A was published, and that was the PDF-A specification, originally requested by the U.S. courts and the NPES and the, who else was it, AIM. A number of organizations saw the need for an archival subset of PDF, which again is sort of another way of saying we wanted a PDF with more interoperability for specific purposes, in this case archiving, or sort of a more guaranteed interoperability. And that was really the function there of PDF-A1. In 2007, as was mentioned earlier, Adobe announced that they would be releasing PDF to the ISO. No real work took place in the ISO committees. It's often said, quite correctly, that we in the ISO committees, we appear to be sleeping peacefully because, we get this standard handed to us, and what do? We sort of sit around and kind of poke at it and a couple of sentences here or there, and all of a sudden it's 7-8 years later and we haven't shipped it yet, right? So what are we doing? Well, in fact, we didn't actually get to work on it as a standard until 2008. The document was released to us in July 2008 after Adobe had done, as Leonard mentioned in the previous session, a fairly significant, generally editorial, although in the standard committee we would consider it technical, but generally speaking, editorial rewrite of the components of the document. What were the major things that they changed? A lot of the language in the previous version of the PDF specification used terms that are not really proper ISO terms. In the ISO, if you say something's required, you have to say it shall. Okay, but the previous version of the specification said must. What's the difference between shall and must? The ISO likes shall. Okay, so that's all you need to know as far as they're concerned. So there's significant rewriting along the lines of turning must into shall and various other changes, language changes like that. But as Leonard quite rightly said, and as the ISO committee made a statement to this effect back when it accepted the document from Adobe, we said this document is technically equivalent to 1.7. And that has been, and as we proceeded further forward, we really have found very, very few cases, if any, where that statement is not entirely comprehensively true. So Adobe announced the release of PDF to ISO, and in 2008, ISO 32000 Part 1 was published, and the committee began its work on updating and revising the specification. We have been holding about 2 meetings a year since then, that is to say full-scale, week-long meetings. They vary. Sometimes they're in North America, sometimes they're in different parts of the world, in which we have been cranking through each round of comments received from members of the committee, more recently from members of the PDF Association who have used the liaison status of the association to communicate their comments directly through to the committee managing the specification. The document is now at what we call its second DIS. DIS, D-I-S, is Draft International Standard. It is, in fact, technically available as a DIS. You can buy it. They'll take your money and you can get that DIS. I don't suggest that you do so, nor do I suggest that you implement anything having to implement this software based upon the DIS at this particular time. It's not complete. There are tweaks still happening to the document, and they're not localized in any particular part of the document. They're occurring pretty much all over it. Relatively few of them at this point are highlighting any particular dramatic substantive change. In fact, we've sort of already put down the feature lock, so there's really no new features going into PDF 2.0. But nonetheless, the document is still to a degree in flux. So who are the players here? Who are the people that are actually have their fingers on the triggers of this thing and hands in the pies? Or I'm mixing my metaphors in a near violent fashion. So first of all, I want to this tangle of numbers above here. I want to explain it very briefly because this is ISO organizes things in a particularly arcane way. My opinion is they keep it this way so that everybody else is intimidated, doesn't want to come anywhere near it. So ISO, that's the mothership organization, has technical committees, TCs, okay? There are many of them, and one of them is called TC 171. That would be where the document management aspects of PDF technology are managed for ISO purposes by the various committees therein. SC2 is subcommittee 2 of ISO TC 171, and within SC2 are a number of WGs, working groups. All of the various PDF itself, PDF-A, PDF-E, PDF-UA, and PRC, and then a couple of ancillary specifications that are not about PDF but related to it, all occur within working groups of TC 171 SC2. And you're awake. Well, I'm impressed. So we'll keep going here. So who can play? Well, there are 27 member countries. That is to say, Belgium, the UK, the US, and so on, different countries in the world, which are members of TC 171 SC2. And those member bodies are made up of the standards organizations in these various countries. You can become accredited with these standards organizations, and that is one way to find yourself joining the ISO table where we sit around and negotiate the changes to the specification. Another way is through the PDF Association, but I'm not going to bore you in great details about that. So ANSI, ANSI is the American National Standards Institute, and it is its accredited representative for the purposes of being the secretary or the secretariat for the development of these ISO standards is AIM, which is an organization, a member organization that services fundamentally the ECM industry located in Washington, D.C., or environs thereof. So the project, every single ISO standard has a project leader. The project leader is elected by the committee, that the standard is elected by that standards committee, and keeps their job until the committee decides to get somebody else. And at the present point in time, the project leaders for ISO 32000 are my humble self and Cherie Ekholm of Microsoft. Microsoft has been taking a significant interest in development of PDF standards since about 2008, and they've been taking a very active role in helping us develop PDF 2.0. So most importantly, the members of the committee, the people who actually show up, who actually do the work, make the suggestions, write or rewrite the text, and give the project leaders, who are fundamentally merely editors, okay, all the hard work of actually cranking these text edits into the document. Those are the ISO registered subject matter experts, and there's some of them here in this room, who show up at these ISO meetings or just get onto the phone call or simply send in comments to the committee. And those are the people, the real heroes of the development work of any ISO standard, are the people who understand, even if they're super specialists over here in digital signatures or in security or whatever else, they make enormous contributions to the development of these documents. And without, frankly, the range of subject matter experts who show up and do the stuff, none of this would be possible. We'd have to hand it back to Adobe and let them do it all. We're not going to do that, by the way, so don't even think about it. So other subject matter experts, as I've said, there are those who register for the meetings, who show up, who are participating right there in the debate about the particular features or changes to text and so on. And then there are others who are perhaps have a point of expertise, who get asked for particular opinions or come in kind of as consultants to the committee, offer very specific opinions in specific areas. In general, this process is open to everybody who has an interest in it, who wishes to attend. There's really no limiting factor on that. If you want to show up and you're willing to travel and do that, we are delighted to have you there. My phone started buzzing, so I apologize for that. Okay, what's the status of PDF 2.0? Well, it's nearing the final process here. So as you can see, the most recent version of the document was dated as of July, and that is the document before the committee at this present point in time, the second DIS. And the committee will be meeting again next month, in fact, in Basel, Switzerland, for another week, in which we'll be chewing through, I believe we have at this time about 460 comments against the document to process. That's a major improvement. We had about 1,000 comments last time, and that was painful. So let me start off with what are the changes. And by the way, this session is supposed to be preliminary to the panel session that's going to follow this, in which we debate PDF 2.0. Is it a good thing? Will anybody care? No, it's not obvious that everybody will. I think you will, but it's not obvious, and it's not necessarily the case. So that's the purpose. So this is intended to be informational, setting up that panel session. So qualitative changes in PDF 2.0. Well, first and foremost, many of you will be glad to hear that there were a couple of bugs in 1.7. There have been a couple of bugs for some time, and many of these have been corrected. Will I stand here and say that we got every bug? Well, can anybody ever say that? So no, I can't tell you that. Implementation details captured and documented. I think for many of you, one of the most important features of PDF 2.0 is that as the various experts have been showing up at these meetings, have gone into this document and gone through it over and over and combed it over and over again, many questions arose. Hey, how do we do this, or how do we do that? And obviously in many of these cases, the question, where all eyes turn to Adobe to say, well, it doesn't really clearly say what we do here, so what does that rather popular implementation do? And Adobe, to the immense credit, and it's very gratifying. I'm very happy to stand here and say this, has been a superb player in this. The questions are answered concisely and forthrightly. Many implementation details have been, have come out of the woodwork this way and have made their way into the document. And in some cases, those details have been debated, and we found, well, we're not very happy with that particular idea. And a tweak has occurred, and Adobe has been extremely gracious, not only in the information they provided, the lifting or parting the kimono in various places to make sure that the document was a much fairer representation of all that would be expected of a processor when it was going to wake up and smell a PDF file. The language of the specification has become significantly tighter, and what ambiguities that we found have been either eliminated, mitigated, or constrained in some other way. It's a major part of the effort to clarify to clarify the specification, to ensure that it's something that's clean and clear and consistent, that the relatively similar concepts are expressed and discussed in relatively similar ways, and we hope that when you look at it and you compare it to 1.7, that you certainly get that feeling as well. And lastly, I'd say there are a number of, from qualitative point of view, we've updated a lot of the normative references. So where before in 1.7, we would have referred, I think, to Unicode 6. Now we refer to the recently published Unicode 8. And there are many other, we've gone through, we have yet to do all of this work, but we are in the process of going through the 124 or whatever it is, normative references, making sure that they're in fact still valid documents, and if they're not, have they been updated, and so on and so forth, and addressing these questions one by one. This is, it's really a tremendous amount of work that we've been doing on this, but I think at the end of the day, it's a much higher quality document with a lot more, with something that's better at doing the job that we all needed to do. So what are the strategic changes in PDF 2.0? Number one, I think probably one of the biggest ones that people will notice is that the conforming processor concept has actually been kind of removed. There is no such thing as a conforming 32,000 processor anymore. There is instead a kind of an admin. What have we done with those rules? To the extent possible, we turn them into conformance rules for the file itself, for the file. In other words, we turn it into file specification requirements rather than leaving kind of a intermixing implementation requirements alongside those file specification requirements. Obviously, some implementation requirements remain, but we have been quite aggressive at looking at them and asking ourselves, does this really need to be a processor requirement, or is this actually, can we get rid of it, or can we otherwise recast it as some sort of a file specification requirement, which would be ideal. That said, there is still the following concept of conformance, which is nonetheless very important. And we state very clearly in the document that if you are going to implement a feature, you must implement it correctly and you must implement it fully. And while this is kind of waved at in PDF 1.7, it's waved at because there is a sort of larger idea that you should actually conform to everything in there. So we changed it. We made it so we're no longer suggesting that you have to, even if you're a print developer, you've got to go ahead and do the whole 9 yards of the forms and JavaScript and stuff. No, that was pretty unreasonable, and that's one of the reasons why print developers never bothered with that. But why would I do it, right? They're non-conforming, and they chose to be non-conforming. We're trying to make it much harder, as it were, to choose to be non-conforming, because there's nothing your processor has to conform to unless you choose to support a feature. And if you choose to support that feature, but you're not going to do the right thing with it, then we do indeed have something to say about that. And so that's the nature of there's a twist there in the way in which the conforming processor is handled. There's an open model now for rich media and 3D and geospatial data, other advanced kinds of dynamic content. I won't drone on about this too much, but it's really much more important for you as developers to look at it and come to your own conclusions. But what you'll find is that we're no longer like pointing at Flash and saying this is the way it's got to be. There's an open model for this, which allows you to think in terms of adding PRC data, using it, and we're even going further. Where there's other projects also underway in the same technical committee to standardize Acrobat JavaScript as an ISO standard, to standardize the 3D JavaScript, and so on. So these are various improvements and ways in which we're going about adding to the standardization aspect, so these very rich features are available for general use by any implementer who wants to read the document. A major strategic change in the document that's very close to my particular heart. I kind of came to this originally from the tagged PDF world, if you can believe it. The semantic tagging model has been updated for PDF 2.0, completely rewritten, in fact. So tagged PDF is completely rewritten. We believe far clearer, and with new structure elements, some removed, and very clear. For example, organization of structure types, so you can know precisely what legitimate hierarchies are of structure types and what illegitimate hierarchies are. This stuff wasn't really completely clear in 1.7. We also, a relatively recent thing, we decided to add support for RDFA. So semantics for embedded file streams. This is one of my favorite features as well, and I believe this is something a very serious value for PDF's future. The idea of AF relationship. This is a feature that was actually the only feature that distinguishes PDF A2 and PDF A3 is the concept of permitting arbitrary embedded files. And in PDF A3, an AF relationship key has to be present, describing is this a supplement. Actually, I'm going to get into the details of that in a moment. Last but by no means least, in PDF 2.0, we did deprecate XFA technology from PDF, as we were discussing in the previous discussion. There may be still some open questions precisely about how we implement that, but that's certainly a major change and one that is raising a significant amount of questions, as we saw earlier. So there are a number of new features, and I'm going to kind of waft through these pretty quickly here because I don't think I have an enormous amount of time. First and foremost, the unencrypted wrapper document. I should mention that these numbers here, these tell you where in the specification these things lie. For members of the PDF Association, the DIS is available to you right now. You could download it from the intranet. You can look at these things for yourself. So the unencrypted wrapper document, we're providing the concept is to provide custom security handlers in principle, so that there could be a PDF which has an unencrypted, that is to say, cover page, allowing and that cover page would provide users with the information necessary so they could understand whether or not they had software with the appropriate handler. Today, if you have an encrypted document inside of a PDF, you don't have this model, so it's not really possible to deliver the content in this way where any particular security, where implementation has a chance to use the appropriate security handler to open the encrypted document directly. This is the one, I found these charts were so great, I decided to include them in my slide. Unfortunately, I don't have so many great charts for the rest of my slide. Black point compensation solves a problem in allowing for converting between color spaces in terms of the sensitivity. Different color spaces differ with respect to the extent to which they can go deep in various colors. Don't ask me too much about it. I'm not a color expert. Broadly speaking, this allows for superior conversion between color spaces. There are new annotation types, including projection annotations and 3D and rich media annotations. This is part of the more generic, more open functionality that I was referring to earlier for dynamic content. PADE signatures, as used in PDF, are now detailed and far more comprehensively and supported in PDF 2.0. The purpose here is to align PDF's digital signature capabilities with the oncoming, or actually arriving, EU and ETSI digital signature standards, and hopefully ensuring that PDF is well configured to serve as the comprehensively as a vehicle for digitally signed content in the future. In addition to, or deeply related with adding POTAs to PDF 2.0, long-term validation of signatures required a variety of technical facilities which have also been added to the specification. Document security store and timestamp dictionaries being those systems which provide for long-term validation of signatures. There are geospatial features that have been added to PDF 2.0. I actually had a graphic I could have used here, and it's just occurring to me now. That's not much fun. There's a great demo by North Avenue, I believe it is, showing they took a bunch of USPS, US survey maps that have and they added the geospatial data. These things are locked to particular latitude and longitude, and they're obviously scaled maps. They took these things, these PDF files, they added the relevant geospatial data, and now they've created a map of the U.S. You can actually look at the U.S. over time by way of these USGS survey maps. So you can go look at what San Francisco, what the survey map of San Francisco looked like in 1905, and then blend that with the map from 1915 and so on. And these are all just PDFs that line up perfectly on top of each other by simple virtue of the fact that the file has been imbued with the relevant geospatial data. There are all kinds of potential applications for that. Namespaces for tag PDF. Well, one of the limiting factors in tag PDF in 1.7 is that there's really no bridge out to all the various other kinds of structured content that are out there. So, for example, what do you do with MathML? What do you do with very HTML even? There are all kinds of different possibilities for how you might implement namespaces by way of providing for inclusion of ChemML or MathML or other kinds of data directly into a PDF so that you can tag elements on the PDF page with the relevant types of structure elements as they are known in external namespaces. Pronunciation hints, a relatively recent addition, allows for the addition of phonetical information to tags in tagged PDF, allowing for example, distinctive representations by way of when these elements are voiced by a text-to-speech engine. Document parts, a feature introduced for PDF VT purposes and now added also to PDF 2.0. Makes it possible to process pages in a directed way for various output requirements. And there are various features, dpart dictionaries and so forth, and document parts metadata added to PDF 2.0 to provide this facility. This is essentially a facility for high-speed variable transactional printing purposes. Okay, so associated files, one of my favorite subjects or favorite capabilities in PDF, and I think as I go around and as I talk to people, particularly in corporates about PDF and ask them, what do they know about PDF, what it can do, and do they know, for example, that it's possible to add machine processable information to a PDF and use that PDF as a deliverable, including that machine processable data, and consider it, in fact, the whole story for delivery and installation of such data. And they rarely do. Associated files, you can include other versions. You could include the source file. You could include, as I say, machine-readable data, supplemental information like movies or databases and so on. Enormous possibilities for the idea in which a PDF file becomes a cover page, essentially, for content that has nothing to do with PDF whatsoever and doesn't require or need or benefit from a page-based representation. So associated files provide that facility. It's been around since PDF 1.3, but it's only beginning to attract some attention since PDF A3 came out, as what I seem to notice. We had here a specification that really highlighted associated files, and this seems to be the trigger which gets people asking themselves, gee, what could we do with it? So many things as it turns out. You may have been in Bruno's session, previous track, a little earlier, where he talked about the Zugpferd standard. This is a German e-invoice standard in which they've leveraged PDF A3 by virtue of saying, let's just attach invoice information as an XML file to the PDF A3 file, and then whenever anybody so that when you generate this file and deliver it, you've actually delivered something that a machine can eat and read, place it into its own accounts payable system, and do the right thing. It doesn't add any burden to the sender or the deliverer to do this. Whenever they choose to bring a system online that can handle these kinds of files, they will, and then they get the benefit. but it doesn't drive them in that direction as do the more machine-heavy EDI type of processes. So associations are interesting in that associated files can be associated not just with the document as a whole, but with a part of the document, with a particular graphics object, even with a structure element in a tagged PDF. Why might that be interesting? Well, you might not, if you didn't want to tag the page content of the PDF with mathml for whatever reason, you might nonetheless decide that you want to, with a structure element associated with a piece of math, you might say, you might link that to an associated file that's attached to the document, like a blob of mathml, for example. So you have an implementation, you have a separate mathml viewer. You don't want to display the stuff right on the page. The associated files makes this sort of thing possible. So what are the possible AF relationship values? They include source, data, alternative, supplement, and unspecified. Unspecified characteristically being the default. And these are, as you can tell, very high level, very generic ideas, but they nonetheless, I hope, provide sufficient information to allow to allow a processor to decide to do something interesting. What would you do when you found a PDF file that had an attached EPUB file with an AF relationship key of alternative? If your viewer was capable of displaying an EPUB file, you might say to your user, hey, I just opened something that I can give it to you in a reflowable mode, or I can give it to you as a PDF. Which would you like? It might be something of interesting to some users. So there are many new capabilities for existing features. Okay, features that are already in PDF 2.0 and have been tweaked or improved or added or developed in some way. I am not going to iterate through all of these different updates to the existing features, but I do encourage you to take a look at. There's some here that are clearly of real interest. 256-bit AES encryption, that's something that a number of people have been asking for a very long time. Close to my heart, there are new artifact types for page num, line numbers, Bates, redaction artifacts. These are features that I think are completely, were previously completely missing and unavailable in tag PDF before, and actually generate some rich functionality now that they're present, and make artifacts actually significantly more interesting as a feature of tag PDF. We have a number of different structure elements, document, fragment, aside, title, and so on, which again enrich in the model for tag PDF. And a variety of other new capabilities as well, ranging from from transparency, halftones, through to digital signatures. I certainly encourage you to check these out in the document. A number of areas in PDF 2.0 were substantially rewritten. And they're not rewritten so much to say that all the rules got changed. They're rewritten by and large initially in the attempt to clarify. And where we said, well, it's not really quite enough to just change a few words in this paragraph, or maybe switch a couple of sentences around in this other paragraph. We really need to take a look at this whole section on, say, digital signatures, and comprehensively assess it and decide how well, what exactly we want to say here. Well, we know what we want to say. We know what the rules are. The rules. Precisely how are we going to convey this stuff to make it to reduce the challenge in uptake and make sure that people have the best chance of implementing this stuff in a consistent fashion. So as you can see, the sections substantially written, and a number of them are non-trivial. The rendering section, for example. Transparency got a major overhaul with a lot of bright minds spending a lot of time and energy on this, a subject that many of us at the ISO table really don't understand at all. So it was actually a subsection of specialists who got together a couple different times outside of the ISO process and came to conclusions about transparency. So the digital signature section, metadata, and tag PDF, as I said, area of particular interest to me, and accessibility support, these are all areas that got completely overhauled, which is to say, the copy got taken out, considered as a whole, rewritten, and then put back in. And we, as always, we encourage people, particularly even at this late stage, to please read the draft, find things that are wrong with it, and let us know. We definitely don't want to ship it with any problems in it to the extent possible, and we do want to ship it as fast as humanly possible so that you can actually get it in your hands, start writing software. So there were a few things removed from PDF 2.0 that were in 1.7, maybe more than a few. Most of these things were removed because they're basically either unused or they've been replaced by something better. There are a couple of exceptions. In XFA, for example, has been deprecated, but we It's a feature that is most definitely in use, as we heard in the last session, but we did not replace it. And that is that is a subject that is of interest and concern to a number of folks. And we could talk about that more if you wanted. Movie and sound annotations and actions. These are things. These things have been deprecated in favor of the new concept of the open concept of rich media annotations. The info dictionary finally dispatched into the I don't know the graveyard of standards past. No, 1.7 still, as Leonard quite rightly said previously, is not going away. And so, if you wish to write info dictionary, you can, but don't make it a PDF 2.0 file. TrapNet annotations, as I recall during their meetings, we all sat around, we scratched our heads, and we couldn't remember ever having seen implementation that included TrapNet. So that was one reason to get rid of that one. I think it was TrapNet. That was one of those. Various other things, procset, page piece dictionaries, interesting subject. We found out as we were going to put the stake in its heart. Nonetheless, an IBM showed up to wave their hands and said, "Wait a minute, we use this thing in a big way. Don't take page piece dictionaries away." So we had that conversation in April, actually in a room just over there where we held the previous ISO meetings. In fact, I think it was in Albertus where we're doing sessions as well today. And it was an interesting discussion. We didn't decide to change our minds, but IBM certainly learned about our process and what's going on and what they could do or not do. And they're off to make their own business decision. That's up to them. OS-specific file specifications, yeah, those were gone. And a number of other aspects, many of which I'm not deeply familiar with, frankly, but that are nonetheless features that have been previously in PDF and now are no longer there, hopefully contributing to some degree of simplification of the specification, even as the page count somehow miraculously stayed about the same or actually got longer. So that's basically the overview of what's changed in PDF 2.0 from a strictly factual point of view, without offering too many opinions on the subject. In the next session, the final session of this conference, we're going to have a panel session in which we very much encourage you to ask questions about that, about PDF 2.0. Tell us what you hate or something that's particularly grinding on you or something that you love. And if you got good suggestion for brand new feature, we probably can't include it at this point. In fact, I'm pretty sure we can't. But we are definitely already gearing up for consideration of what comes after PDF 2.0. And any input about new features and capabilities would be very welcome then. So with that said, I think I'll take a break. I'll stop now, and then in a matter of a few minutes, we'll return. When everybody's in the room, we'll conduct the final panel session talking about PDF 2.0 and where we go from there. Thank you.